Well, thanks for joining us again on this Friday afternoon, and well done for sticking with me over these 2 weeks. We have traversed some of the highs and lows of Psalm 119. We've covered about half of the stanzas in the poem, but hopefully that's enough to give you a real taste of this epic psalm and all of the riches and the treasures that are in it. I hope, like the psalmist said at the beginning of this song, that you have seen wonderful things in his word. I hope it's been an encouragement to you as much as it has to me. Let's have a look at the final stanza today, verses 169 through to 176. Probably the best way to get a feel for what's going on here is to remember that this is a song. Now, of course, the tune is lost to us long ago, but as you read all the Psalms, it's always good to think of the tone of the music. What key would this be played in? Now, the way that the structure of this stanza breaks down is in 4 couplets, 2 verses, 2 verses, 2 verses, 2 verses. And so we're going to have a look at those, and I want you to see if you can pick the key that this song would have been played in. It's not as straightforward as you first think, and in many ways it's at first glance an odd conclusion to such an epic song. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's pick up the first 2 verses. May my cry come before you, Lord. Give me understanding according to your word. May my supplication come before you. Deliver me according to your promise. So we open with a cry and a supplication. It's a prayer. The stanza begins as a prayer. It's a prayer for understanding, presumably because he doesn't fully understand yet. And it's a prayer for deliverance, because as we know throughout this psalm, he's faced times of real difficulties. So the opening of this stanza seems to be played in a minor key. The song starts maybe not melancholic, but certainly with a sense of yearning and longing. We'll move on to the second couplet, verse 171, 172. May my lips overflow with praise, for you teach me your decrees. May my tongue sing of your word, for all your commandments are righteous. May my lips overflow. May my tongue sing. It's a couple of verses of praise. We've got the tongue and the lips working together, offering praise to God. This is a joyful part of the stanza. So all of a sudden we've moved from the minor key to a major key. The song has picked up, the rhythm's increased, and it's a happy tune at this point in the psalm. But then have a look at verses 173, 174. May your hand be ready to help me, for I've chosen your precepts. I long for your salvation, Lord, and yet your law gives me delight. So now we're really confused, because now we've got him asking for help, for the Lord to deliver him, but at the same time, as he longs for salvation, God's word also fills him with delight. So here in the third couplet, we have the experience of the first half of the psalm all meeting in a big jumbled collision. We've got the minor key, the major key. We've got the longing and the yearning. We've got the praise and the delight. And at this point, you can be forgiven for thinking that the psalmist is all over the place. His life seems like a bit of a yo-yo. But I guess you pause at this moment and you say, isn't that just like what my life is like? There are days when I sing praise to God and I really know the delight of following Jesus. And then on that very same day, I can dip and get all muddled, and I can feel like I really need God's help, and I can cry out with that prayer at the beginning of the psalm for deliverance and help. As I've said before, you can be more than one thing at one time. And that tension in the Christian life is ever present as the psalmist composes this psalm. But I guess it all comes to a head in the final 2 verses. Let me live that I might praise you, and may your laws sustain me. I have strayed like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I have not forgotten your commands. So again, ups and downs, highs and lows. Verse 175, it's a prayer of his commitment and conviction. Lord, let me, so he's praying to God, let me be the man who praises you, and I want your laws to sustain me. But then in the very next sentence, he admits, he confesses his weakness. Oh, I've strayed like a lost sheep. Please, Lord, you need to seek me because I need you to find me because I'm lost. And yet, even in the wilderness, I've not forgotten your commands. It seems like an odd note for this epic song to finish on. He's a bit of everything, all muddled up into one. It's really interesting when we look back to the very start of the psalm, the opening verse of Psalm 119, blessed are those who walk according to the law of the Lord. And in the very final verse of this psalm, I have strayed like a lost sheep. So he knows from what he's written previously that his life doesn't always reflect the desire of his heart to walk according to God's word. And yet he still hangs in there tenaciously, and he makes this his prayer. And so I want to encourage you as we finish our time in Psalm 119 to make this your prayer too. Don't think that the end of the psalm is a muddled confusion of emotion. The end of the psalm is an accurate and honest and authentic representation of the life of every believer. And that even after you travel through this amazing psalm, all 176 verses, it doesn't mean you're going to come out the end of it flawless and perfect. You'll still have rough edges, you'll still have bad days, just indeed as the psalmist did himself. And yet this psalm gives us the words, especially this last stanza, to express that tension of our conflicting desires and our confusing and often difficult lives back to God in prayer. And if you're ever stuck for words to know what to say, do what I do. I've picked through Psalm 119. I've written down key verses that particularly seem to speak to my context at this time. If I do the exercise in 12 months' time, I'm sure I'll pick a whole host of different verses. But why don't you even just re-examine the ones that we've looked at over these afternoon teas and find the words that really sum up your expression, your yearning, your confession, your praise, your trouble to God, and make them your own. It's the privilege of every Christian to be able to read Psalm 119 and not just see the God whose perfect word sustains our lives, but also to see our own experience reflected here too. Well, next week, afternoon tea continues, but it's no longer with Scott, it's going to be with Gareth. Gareth is going to take us through a little part of John's Gospel over the next 2 weeks. So please tune in on Monday and pick up afternoon tea with Gareth. I'm sure you're going to have a blast.